topic is the channel itself. And when it comes to organizational communication, we talked about the difference between formal and informal communication, which you basically already mentioned. Just like to think directing and ordering people to do certain things or commands. I mean, if you're in management, you're going to have to tell people what to do. Now you want to do it in a nice way, in a good way, an effective way, but you're going to have to tell people what to do. So that's typically done through a formal channel of communication. And I think sometimes people are too ambiguous and make suggestions when in some cases it would be better to be clear and direct activities, right? I don't know if you've ever experienced this where a manager needs you to do something. And again, this is something I've experienced, but I'm not sure what your experience is. If a manager needs me to do something, I would prefer them tell me exactly what they need me to do, rather than say, hey, could you just handle this problem, right? That's too ambiguous. There's so many ways you could do something. If you need me to do X and it's a specific thing, please tell me what that thing is so that I can accomplish that goal and I'll feel good about what I need to do, and you'll get what you want out of my activity.
Absolutely, yes. I'm facing this.
Right. It's a challenge. And again, I just think to myself, this comes from people kind of almost not understanding the benefits. Like it's okay to involve people in problem solving and decision making, that's good. But when it comes to formal communication, I think for the most part, you should be as clear as possible with what you want someone to do, what you need someone to do.
Absolutely.
Informal communication channels are just non-professional, or what we could say casual forms of communication, right?
Yes, yeah.
Through an official channel, like if you're communicating through Microsoft Teams, even if it's a group without managers, the fact is that some of that communication will be recorded or captured. So as a employee, don't think that just because you're using even employee email, that the company doesn't have a right to track what you said.
Yeah.
So that's a key idea that everyone has to learn to understand. But like WhatsApp might be different, right? Because the company doesn't have access to it. So I think that's where people feel a little bit more free. And again, it's just a question of, I'm not saying that you're sharing secrets or you're saying bad things necessarily, but it's just people tend not to criticize and even critique or question certain things unless they feel they can do so without, they don't fear being attacked or reprisals and those types of things. And you need a space for that. Everyone needs a space for that to kind of think through things. And if someone's becoming too negative, even in an informal channel, other employees might say, hey, let's work together, those types of things. But that's still an important part of the organization, because if someone is getting negative, they should have a way to express that. And if they're a problem because of that negativity, even in an informal channel, it's going to affect their work, right? So you need to be aware of those things, and it's very important to understand all those factors. The other point I would make is it's possible to have informal communication between a manager and a subordinate, right? So just because you're talking with your manager, if it's over lunch or over coffee, it might be more of an informal communication because he or she isn't giving you direction, orders. It's not an official email. What they're doing, it's casual, right? Maybe you could have a form of friendship even with your boss. Different people have different levels of that. Different organizations will encourage or discourage those types of things. But I think it's possible to have informal communication even between levels of the organization, depending on what you're talking about, right? Another way to look at it is getting to know somebody. Say you have somebody that reports to you. Rather than only talking with them in formal manner, officially, it would be a good idea to get to know them. Who's their family? Where are they from? What sports do they like? Whatever, just different things like that are useful and important ways of building connection and relationships inside an organization. So let's appreciate those informal channels as well. Yep, they tend to be more spontaneous. So that's that. We talked about this, in the outline, but this is just a chart showing, again, the hierarchy, what we would call the org chart, organizational chart, right? You got your CEO, 2 VPs, managers, and then line employees beneath the managers for each department. Upward and downward communication. So as we said, I always like to start with the downward communication, giving direction, commands as clearly as possible. This is what I need from you. This is the strategy. This is the task. These are the objectives. Downward communication from the CEO to the vice presidents. And then upward communication is usually, the examples I give are reports, right? If you have a report to deliver, that's upward communication because your job and tasks require you to put together this report with all the information and then deliver it to your vice president or manager at the end of the week or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you have the lateral communication between people at the same level, possibly in different departments, as we mentioned. But certainly colleagues and professionals working together is a form of lateral communication, right? When you have a team and they're all kind of at the same level, there's not a difference in rank or title. For the most part, you're working together. That's a form of lateral communication where there's a lot of cooperation and collaboration taking place. And those 3 C's, you're coordinating activities, you're fostering or creating more cooperation between departments, and you're collaborating with people that you need to work with. That's kind of that form of lateral communication, the 3 C's. All right, so we got that. This is company Mobilneal, who has a code of conduct that relates to communication. And they're trying to create a culture of open communication, which we talked about in terms of what the RTA does in any organization. Sometimes the question can be asked, do employees have a place to make suggestions, right? Where do you contribute your suggestions? How do you voice those concerns? So that's a question that, your organization can answer and any organization needs to answer is how do you encourage people to communicate honestly and accurately, creating a flow of information between people inside the company. We sometimes use the term open door policy, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's a good idea. I think that just in terms of management, you have, some people hide behind their door, the closed door policy. Other people open their door so that people can come into the office, and other people open their door so that they can walk out of their office and go meet with people, right? And I think the idea that, hey, I'm sitting here in my office waiting for people to come to me is a very passive and reactive way of fostering communication. It's better to go out and be among and with people, sit alongside people, create a culture of communication by getting outside of your office and walk around and talk with people and catch people doing things right and compliment them right there on the spot and praise people in public. That's the kind of communication that is really motivating. It's a dynamic and charismatic form of leadership that a lot of people need to understand and take on. Right? I think it's very effective. And then people will feel comfortable sharing their thoughts.